Now joined by the voice of UCF Athletics, Marc Daniels. They get ready for a bowl game, National Signing Day. Marc, if you don't mind, I know you have been busy prepping for the bowl game, but also with National Signing Day, how do you feel? What's the mood at UCF and in Orlando about today?
Well, it's the highest class UCF's ever signed. In years past, to think about finishing inside the top 50 would have been an incredible accomplishment. And whenever the number falls and whatever recruiting service you want, if it's anywhere between 28, 32, whatever it is, UCF has never signed a class as high as it is. And it's a quality class. It's a compliment to Coach Malzahn and his assistant. It's obviously also part of the fact that UCF's in the Big 12 to be able to sell that. And, the thing that you like if you're a UCF fan is there's some positions that they felt like they had to go find some people. I think they did that. But the number 4-star players, this had never been seen by UCF before. The quality of the players, even those out of state, as well as some of the bigger programs in the state of Florida where UCF had a hard time getting in the doors in years past. So it's a great class that addressed some needs. I think Coach is really happy with where they are.
What do you think about the status of a portal quarterback? Is that maybe the next priority?
Well, Gus was asked today about that, and he said, he wouldn't rule anything out. They're going to, continue to see what might be out there at the same time. They've got a number of guys on the roster. I think any team that is losing a starting quarterback that have been there for multiple years feels as if, hey, let's go see if there's somebody with experience that we think is going to help with what we want to do. I don't think UCF would or is just looking for somebody to say, okay, let's just grab a quarterback because they've started before. Does it fit what Gus Malzahn and his offense coordinator, Darren Hinshaw, are doing and what they want to do? If there's somebody that they feel is, worthy of going after, then maybe we'll see if that happens. There are a couple of quarterbacks in this class that UCF added. One, reclassified from 25 to 24. Timmy McClain started a few games this past year for UCF when John Rice Plumlee was hurt. Dylan Risk was the third quarterback this year. So there's some quarterbacks there, but if something is to emerge, as Gus was asked earlier today in his press conference, he's not opposed to taking a closer look at it.
Marc, when you look at this first year in the Big 12, there's obviously things when you make that move that you think, okay, the lines have to get bigger. We need more numbers here. What after this past year having wrapped up, what do you look at with UCF and say, like, hey, here are the keys and these are the things in progress that need to get better to be better in the long run in the Big 12 and nationally?
Yeah, I think, guys, even the last time I was on and talking to you after going through the first journey through the Big 12, I think what stood out was the quality of offensive and defensive lines. Just not just big guys. Everybody can look at the depth chart and see guys 6'4", 6'5", 320, 330, but are they quick? Do they have a quick first step? Are they able to, respond quickly as opposed to somebody that's just slow and has cement on their feet? And I think UCF saw the quality of those lines, as well as I think the size of some linebackers and some safeties. And that's okay. Going through the season and to experience it, and I think, UCF fans saw, but more importantly, I think Gus and the staff said, okay, we got an idea about this league and the quality of players. Now, how do we upgrade some of these positions to make sure that we can compete? Look, as we talked before, and UCF's record is what it was in the conference. They got blown out in one game. The Kansas game was the only game that they were never really in. Every other game, they had a chance to win, but they made some mistakes that you can't do in this league that caught up with them. And they were, in some areas not able to compete with the quality of whether it be line or linebackers or safeties or things like that. UCF's running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks prove they can play. They have guys on the all-conference team, so I don't think that was an issue for that. And they certainly had guys like, their defensive ends that were able to play with anybody. But can you get depth there? Can you get guys that should somebody go down, you don't feel it's a big drop-off? I think that's the spot they know that you've got to get better at. It won't happen with just one high school recruiting class. It may not happen with a portal class. It may take a couple of years, but I think they feel like they got an idea what they need.
Marc, with Gus Malzahn and his offensive mind, Darren Hinshaw, the offensive coordinator, somebody in the chat asked about how much is Hinshaw in control of calling plays and how much does Malzahn have a role? And is Hinshaw still the one that's doing what he was hired to do?
It's interesting. If you ask fans after a loss versus after a win, I bet their response is different.
Yep.
Right. I will say this. I'm not on the headset during a game, but for the most part, Darren Hinshaw is the one calling plays. You don't go all the years that Gus is gone where you did call plays that you may not see something and you talk to Darren about that. You listen to your quarterback. You listen to your, other offensive personnel that may see things. So to say that Gus is involved to 0% wouldn't be accurate. But it's Darren Hinshaw, the one that's calling plays, and Gus absolutely has some input, but it's not a constant input like, okay, you called first, and I'm calling second and third down. If he sees something, Darren would tell you that he welcomes Gus's observation, and I think it worked. Everybody overanalyzes wins and losses and 2-point plays in Norman and things like that, but they've got a pretty good relationship going. They feel good about it. I think Darren understands what Gus wants to do. UCF was a 60-40 run pass team this year. I think Gus likes those numbers, believes you've got to run the football, to win. And it's a good partnership there where Gus is certainly involved, but Darren calls the plays for the most part.
Mark, what do you think they've done to kind of address that? I mean, they played better at the end of the year, clearly, that they rallied and made a bowl game, but to address that run defense issue they had.
Well, I think it was better the last third of the season. They shut down Ollie Gordon, in a game that everything went UCF's way. They also played some really good backs that we saw what this league is all about. But teams had success when they got outside the tackles. And that's where some teams really took advantage of UCF. So you've got to be, bigger, better on the corners. You got to be bigger, better at the safety, to run stop and some linebackers. And I'm not saying that the guys UCF had didn't do a good job, but I think you saw the way some lines did a good job seal blocking and opening up some holes. They've got to get better in that particular area. And look, it worked the other way. I mean, R.J. Harvey, UCF's running back, had a phenomenal season. Where did he have his, best success? The funny thing is, it was with UCF's patient offensive line that, he would allow a hole to open and then get through. And then R.J. also would get outside. So, I think they were better the last third of the season. I think they have an idea about some areas that they had to shore up. They did move some guys around. Some different people started the second half of the season at safety. Some younger guys got a chance to play. So, again, got to get bigger, stronger, and faster. But I think, again, they've got a better idea. But, guys, there's a lot of good running backs in this league that are coming back next year as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a loaded league when it comes to running backs. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Mark, making a bowl game, that was obviously a huge deal. Gus Malzahn now 3 for 3 in that regard. And a familiar place, a place that UCF's been a couple times here recently, the Gasparilla Bowl there in the state of Florida, I guess just a couple hours down the way to Tampa. But your thoughts on the Knights heading back to the Gasparilla Bowl and this matchup with Georgia Tech. What does it mean? Because that bowl season's kind of – It's sort of strange now the way it's evolving with the expanded playoff and what that's going to look like. But how big of a deal was it to make the postseason, and how are you and others kind of viewing this matchup with the Yellow Jackets?
Well, for one, UCF's home away from home, bounce house west, as we call it. UCF has won 6 straight games at Raymond James Stadium between bowl games and playing South Florida. So they're comfortable there, and guys on this team have played there. When you go back and take a look between the bowl game against Florida 2 years ago and playing South Florida there last season. Look, when you have a 5-game losing streak and, you're pretty much have your back to the wall and rally to come back and make a bowl game, I think it says a lot about the leadership of your players that guys didn't, kind of say, well, never mind. It was important to a lot of guys like John Weiss Plumlee, some guys with defense that really wanted to get to, a bowl game, and then to come down to the final game, lost a heartbreaker, Texas Tech, and then had to beat Houston to get there. I think it means a lot. Now, I think last year UCF and look, they got beat by Duke, and Duke earned the game. It was Mike Elko's first year. They were really excited to be there. They rallied around that. They had hardly any opt-outs. Did not get impacted by the portal. UCF was coming off a conference championship, lost to Tulane. John Weiss Plumlee was really dinged up and probably struggled to play in that game. And UCF got beat bad. This year, UCF draws a Georgia Tech team that I think really wants to win for Brent Key, former longtime UCF assistant, his first full year there. They've lost some guys to the portal, but for the most part, most of their key players are there, so they're going to be motivated to win. And I think UCF is too. I think that these seniors that are playing their final game, they'd like to get that win to finish above 500 in the first year in the Big 12. And I think Gus has really done a good job of convincing the players, hey, this is important to continue to build that foundation, to go into that offseason feeling good. Got a great recruiting class today. I think they've done a good job in the portal. That still, has some spots that maybe they can fill as well. If you win that bowl game, you just have a really good vibe as you head towards 24 and what's going to be a wild, crazy, wide open Big 12. So, I think from that standpoint, it should be a pretty good football game, and I look forward to it. And the fact that it's about 75 miles from Orlando makes it easier to get to for UCF fans, so we're looking forward to it.
Unless you're on that one bus that had a breakdown, right? Isn't there like one of the team buses that had a breakdown on the way to Tampa?
Dave, when you become a Hall of Famer, you get different travel. So it's,
Yeah, that stretch limo.
Those 40-seat buses and so forth get a little tight and so forth. But when you kind of glide down there, that special Escalade. No.
Oh my God, I love it.
The team's in Tampa. I'm headed to Tampa tomorrow late morning. But all's good. Everybody's fine and so forth. And we'll head over there tomorrow. Look forward to having a bunch of nice fans and hopefully have a great couple of days.
Have a great trip.
Be safe on I-4. It's always
all right, guys. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Take care.
Marc Daniels, voice of UCF, with us. Coming up next,